Okay, good morning. If some of you already said it, then let's do the whole, that wasn't loud enough, let's hear you. Good morning. There you go. That's the energy I need to embrace as well. So for those of you who were not here yesterday and who do not know me, I'm Yael Shapira, OLAM's Director of Network Engagement and Programs, and I'm excited to be here again with you in the room and with all of you who are joining on Zoom again. So we're not going to see them this time, but let's wave and hopefully they're waving back. Amy just spoke beautifully about the power of community. In this morning's plenary, we're going to take a closer look at a growing part of OLAM's community, our individual members and other Jewish practitioners like them. We're excited to share highlights from a brand new piece of research we commissioned, looking at the experience of Jews working in secular international development and humanitarian aid organizations, particularly following October 7th. So why are we sharing this with you today? First, because this research gives us a window into the experiences of an important and fast-growing segment of OLAM's network. Even if these stories don't reflect your own, they offer insight into what others in our community are experiencing. Second, even if you aren't a Jew working in a secular international development and aid organization, you might still find similarities to your own experience. And third, because we want your input. This is the first time we're sharing this research publicly. It's a soft launch. The more formal launch will take place later this summer. So this morning we're inviting you into the process to respond and help us figure out where we go from here. Before we dive into the findings, here's a quick overview of the next hour or so. I'll start by sharing why we launched this research, the approach we took, and a few key takeaways. Then I'll hand it over to Mitch Markle, Executive Vice President of Burson, the research firm we used, who will walk us through some highlights of the data. And after that, we'll allow space for you to reflect and provide us your feedback. For the sake of time, we're only sharing a portion of the findings today. When we launch more formally, we'll make the full data set available to our network. As we walk through the data, I want to emphasize that this isn't just a set of numbers. These are personal experiences, including those of people in this room. Some of you here filled out the survey yourselves, and we want to thank you for sharing your stories and trusting us with them. Much of the data relates to experiences of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment. We know that conversations around these topics can often be charged, so we invite you to come in with an open mind and to really focus on what the data and the people behind it are sharing. Since October 7th, OLAM has seen a major increase in the number of Jews from secular, international development, and humanitarian aid spaces who have reached out to us. Prior to the onset of the war in Israel and Gaza, we had 66 individual members. Today, we have 212. That's a 220% increase in just 18 months. Yeah, go members. When people first started reaching out to us, we began hearing similar stories, feeling of isolation, strained relationships with colleagues, and in some cases, experiences of anti-Semitism or anti-Israel sentiment at work. To be clear, that wasn't everyone's experience, but common things did emerge. Many of these people came to OLAM looking for a place where they could show up fully as Jewish humanitarians, or Jumanitarians, if we want to start using that word, and talk openly about the challenges of being in this sector right now. We wanted to know, how widespread is this? With support from a project-specific grant from Pears Foundation, we launched this quantitative study to help us better understand our network and its needs. We had a few goals in mind: to inform OLAM's own strategy, to help us identify and reach more individual members, and to support Jewish affinity groups and senior-level professionals in making the case for additional support within their organizations. We approached the process with curiosity. We didn't assume that the stories we were hearing reflected the majority experience. We also approached this with a spirit of bridge building. Our intention wasn't to shame the sector or specific organizations, rather to ensure that international development and humanitarian aid space is one where Jews can contribute, feel supported, and thrive. Throughout the process, we took steps to counteract bias and prioritize inclusivity. First, we were guided by expertise. We brought on Burson, formerly Benenson Strategy Group, or BSG, to lead the research. It's a firm with deep experience in the Jewish world, nonprofit space, and in workplace-based studies. They've worked with groups such as JFNA, Hillel, AJWS, Mercy Corps, Doctors Without Borders, and more. We also created a steering committee made up of people from across OLAM's network and beyond. This group reflected a wide range of perspectives, and they helped shape the survey, instrument, and messaging in important ways. I want to take a moment to thank those of you in the room today who are on the steering committee. Thank you. Next, we were really intentional in how we designed the survey itself. We did our best to ensure the questions didn't make assumptions about anyone's experience. We also separated out questions about anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment because we didn't want to conflate them. And finally, we focused on making our outreach global and nonpartisan. Our messaging specifically encouraged participation from people all over the world and across the political spectrum. We wanted to hear from as many voices as possible and reflect the diversity of Jews in secular, international development, and aid organizations. The survey was primarily quantitative, though it also included a couple of open-ended questions. It was completed by 168 Jewish individuals who either currently work or have worked in the past 5 years in a secular, international development, humanitarian aid, or global human rights organization. OLAM initially invited relevant people on our own mailing lists to take the survey and share it with peers. Others accessed it through links shared by colleagues, Jewish affinity groups, or WhatsApp groups they're part of. Or I guess Signal is the place to go these days, not WhatsApp. We know that respondents include those who are already individual members of OLAM, as well as those who have never heard of us. The survey was open from the end of March to the beginning of May, and this timing coincided with the closure of USAID and mass layoffs in the sector, which limited access to certain networks and did affect the survey's reach. That said, we are pleased to get responses from a wide range of organizations in the sector, including NGOs, governmental agencies, multilateral entities, private sector, academic institutions, and and foundations. Among the workplaces represented were USAID, the World Bank, CARE, Oxfam, the UN, and others. The majority of respondents live in the US, but we got responses also from the UK, Israel, and other countries around the world. In just a moment, I'll hand things over to Mitch, who will walk you through the data. But first, I'd like to share our key findings. For the practitioner survey, being Jewish is a core part of their identities, yet some downplay or conceal it at work. This creates a tension between wanting to be authentic and feeling the need to protect themselves. The majority of Jewish practitioners surveyed report having experienced anti-Jewish biases in their workplace, including negative assumptions, offensive comments, and anti-Semitic jokes. Many Jewish practitioners increasingly face bias related to Israel, including negative stereotypes, questioning of Israel's legitimacy, and assumptions about their political views. Some practitioners report that this sometimes results in dismissal of their expertise in the region, leaving them feeling marginalized. And while these challenges existed previously, they have grown since October 7th, impacting career satisfaction and overall sense of belonging. Organizational efforts often stop at surface-level measures, with few organizations providing proactive initiatives like anti-Semitism training, crisis response resources, or spaces for open dialogue. In the absence of strong institutional frameworks, many Jews rely on empathy of their direct managers and colleagues for support. While this is meaningful, it leaves employees to navigate challenges largely on their own, often searching independently for resources or solutions. And last but not least, Jewish professionals in this sector are seeking spaces where they can connect, share experiences, and find support. With that, I will pass it on to Mitch Markle to share some more insights on the data.
Great. Well, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some of the data with you. Let me see if I can do it this way. I got to see my screen. Can I take this off? Yeah, let me just do it this way. So like Yael said, I'm going to take you through some of the actual data. I'm only going to talk for about 20 minutes. We have a lot of data, and I'm going to go very, very quickly, but I will make myself available for about 20 minutes or so after I finish if anybody has specific questions, and we can obviously follow up later. So a couple of the key findings, the key insights that came out of those 160 plus interviews that we did with Jewish practitioners at secular organizations. One, being Jewish does play an important central role in the identity for the majority of our practitioners. About 2/3 of them said it is central to who they are and who they how they belong. And then that translates to most being willing to share their Jewish identity at work, but mostly only if the topic arises naturally. Very, very few people said they come out right away and say, I'm Jewish and I'm proud to be Jewish and I'm here. Most of the individuals we spoke to said simply, if it comes up, I'm more than happy to admit that I'm Jewish and speak to it, but it's not necessarily something that I raise. However, and this is where it starts to get a little bit concerning, most practitioners faced at least one situation in which they feel they had to suppress their own identity, and most of this was driven by the assumptions about their political stance on Israel. And if you look at the very, very first bar, it's about over half of our individuals that we spoke with said that because of their concerns about Israel and the political issues resulting in Israel, that they were going to have to, or they were a little bit tentative to speak to their Jewish identity. But if you look at the next 2 or 3 bars underneath that, what was more concerning to us was the sort of sense that then there would be some repercussions, some anti-Semitic repercussions to them in the workplace. Some of it job-related, some of it professional, but some of it personal as well. So as much as being Jewish is important to them, and as much as they're willing to admit and speak about being Jewish and their Jewish identity at the workplace, they almost all, to a man, admitted that at some point in time they would have to suppress their own acknowledgement of that because of the fear that they had about repercussions. And then just so you can hear in their own words, this, as A.L. said, we did a lot of open-end questions. So people were able to respond in their own words what they were feeling and what they had to say. And you can see just some good examples of what people said. My general approach is not to bring being Jewish up, but to answer honestly when asked a direct question. Somebody said, when only being with interns and junior colleagues, some of them express negative opinions on Jews. It affects me personally in the sense that I do not express my Jewish identity at work. Somebody said, I was advised by the NGO's security advisor not to disclose my Jewishness. So this is somebody who works at the organization at a high up level saying, you're better off not disclosing that you're Jewish. And then we talked a little bit about the political views in Israel. Somebody said, people have made assumptions about my political views on Israel when they find out I'm Jewish, therefore I don't like to tell people I'm Jewish. And somebody else said my expertise on Israel and Gaza was discounted because of my Jewish identity. So these are the things that our professionals are dealing with on a daily basis at the workforce and at the environment that they're showing up at every day. So when it comes to those experiences, over half, 55% of all the professionals we spoke to said that they have experienced some form of anti-Jewish bias or hate in the workplace, both personally and professionally, and negative stereotypes or assumptions were the most common. Again, you can see all the sort of experiences that people had, but negative stereotypes or assumptions about me based on my Jewish identity was the number one concern or experience that somebody had in the workplace. And while bias in the workplace has unfortunately always existed, it has certainly increased post-October 7th. We have 22%, that little sort of pink slice of the pie at the bottom right, 22%, that's 1 in 5 of our professionals saying that they've experienced this sort of anti-bias in the workplace after October 7th has happened. Just to sort of elevate sort of the bigger raise and the bigger concern that we're dealing with now. And then again, in their own words, here's what people had to say. I told a colleague that I was Jewish, And she said, oh, you must be very rich then. She looked at me and said, Jews are honest, question mark? I always thought they were dishonest and slippery. And then somebody else said that they've experienced, they were told in a country that is known for pogroms that Jews had it easy because they have all the money or had all the money. So again, these are the conversations that our professionals are having in the workplace with their colleagues, with their superiors, with their managers. And then when it comes to anti-Israel incidents, slightly more, 57% said that they've experienced something they've experienced or witnessed an anti-Israel incident at their workplace with, again, a variety of options, but negative stereotypes or assumptions that people were making about Israelis, and verbal statements made by colleagues questioning the legitimacy of the State of Israel, or even written communications questioning the legitimacy of the State of Israel, were the most common anti-Israel feelings or experiences that our own professionals are having in their workplace. And this has been even further exacerbated post-October 7th. Here, about a third of our professionals say these sentiments, these anti-Israel feelings and opinions and sentiments that they're hearing are all coming after October 7th. So not only do we see an increase in anti-Semitic incidents, but unfortunately, not surprisingly, post-October 7th, we're seeing more and more people willingly and openly talking about anti-Israel and blaming Israel for the war and what's happening with Palestinians, etc. So when it comes to the support that they're receiving at the workplace, although secular international development and aid organizations provide some basic resources, there really is a clear need to enhance support for these practitioners. So when we ask these people, well, what does your workplace offer? We get a lot of kind of what I would call just very tactical, basic, sort of check-in-the-box types of things. There's a lot of clear and accessible process for reporting incidents of discrimination or bias. We see clear and accessible policies that protect against this stuff. So it's all very, well, this is wrong, you shouldn't do it, and if you have this, call your HR manager, fill out this form, here's how you sort of report it. But there's not a lot of proactive, we're going to help reduce workplace bias. We're going to help explain to our colleagues in the workforce why bias is bad, why anti-Semitism is bad, and so forth. So there's a process when something happens, but there's not a lot of proactivity in terms of mitigating that from happening even in the first place. And then among those who have told us that they've experienced some sort of anti-Semitic incident in the workplace, over half of them didn't even take an action. They just let it go, they went on with their day, they closed their eyes, and they just sort of moved on. They didn't do anything to report it. They didn't do anything to call out the individual that said it. And the reality is most of those people that did not report something didn't do it because they didn't know how to. They didn't know exactly where to go. They didn't know exactly the process to go through. They didn't necessarily feel like they were going to be listened to, even if they did. And that's a big problem, because that speaks to the inherent situation that we're dealing with at the workforce, right? At these these secular nonprofit organizations, where a good majority of their own employees don't even know what to do if they experience bias in the workplace. And then if they did know what to do and they did report it, and we're getting into a smaller subgroup here, but again, if somebody experienced some sort of bias or anti-Semitic incident at work, and they reported it, and they took it to their superiors, and they took it to leadership, 3/5 of them said whatever they did was ineffective, that people just ignored it. And if you look at the big, it's hard for me to from see here, but the big red all the way on the right, that side of the bar, that represents very ineffective. Whatever I did, whatever I reported, whoever I spoke to, whatever repercussions came, were very ineffective. That is a ridiculously high number for something as important and as serious as what we're talking about here. And again, when I do a lot of data, I do a lot of research, I look at a lot of different things. So when I see a number like this, where if you do the math, we're really talking about a third of Jewish professionals who work at nonprofit or secular organizations, about a third of them are telling us, not only did I experience something at the workplace, I reported it, but nothing happened. That's a big, big, big number. And only 1 in 5 of the people that we're talking to even have access to some sort of workplace Jewish affinity group, which really does point to a need in the organization for some place where Jews can go and feel comfortable and feel within a community that they can talk to. And if they exist, most of them are actually willing to participate and join these programs. They just don't really exist. Only maybe one or two people that we spoke to said, yes, my workplace has some sort of Jewish affinity group or Jewish group, and I don't belong to it. So if they exist, they will join. And I can tell you from my own company, we have a Jewish workplace group. We meet once a month, and it is just a great way to kind of speak to what we're hearing, what we're experiencing, both personally, professionally. It is a really, really relief to me knowing that my company provides this type of resource and this type of outlet, right? And everybody that we're talking to here is basically telling us if it does exist, yes, I will participate in it, but most of these organizations don't have it. And again, when it comes to the organizational responses, I reported an incident. I was told to remove reference to the organization when I posted it online, and then 3 people resigned because of that. So here's a company saying, well, you can say what you want, but just take our name off of it. Don't post that this happened at our company. Somebody said, we're not seeing much change. For me, I feel unsafe and let down. And just, again, think about this. This is an organization that somebody works for, they're dedicating. We know the types of organizations these are, so people are making sacrifices, in what they're doing and why they're working there, and yet they don't feel like their own organization supports them, which is really, really, really a disappointment, particularly given what these organizations are basically doing and what their main mission and purpose is. And then somebody said, I've been told that my experience of anti-Semitism was not anti-Semitism. There is nothing greater, we all know this, for you to feel like you were mistreated or had some sort of anti-Semitic experience, and then when you go and complain as a Jew saying this was anti-Semitic, they're told, well, no, it's not. That's not really what anti-Semitism is, right? And that's what this person is saying, that I went to my superior, I complained about what I thought was anti-Semitic, and I was told it wasn't anti-Semitic. And then it causes other issues around isolation and loneliness in the workplace. Somebody said, I worked at an organization for nearly 5 years, and I cannot describe in words how isolating and hostile that workplace is for Jews. With an Israeli background. Somebody said after October 7th, some of the staff, especially the supervisor, had a very pernicious energy and made statements that were very painful. There was no beheaded babies, for example. As the only Jewish person in the previous organization, I felt very isolated. I didn't feel psychologically safe in the environment. And somebody said this would have made the Jewish experience even more isolated. So again, in their own words, we're hearing these practitioners tell us how they're feeling isolated, how they're feeling sort of pushed aside, how they're not feeling listened or heard to. So when it comes to what organizations have done post-October 7th, most practitioners feel that support of post-October 7th mainly came from their direct manager and their colleagues, so the people that they're talking to and working with every day, the human aspect of their workforce, but not so much from the leadership or their organization as a whole. And that's what you can see the red bars in the stack represent, those that say that they just weren't getting any sort of support from, again, the organization overall, the leadership of the organization. Maybe their colleagues reached out to them, maybe their colleagues gave them some support, maybe their direct manager or supervisor, but as an entity, as a whole organization, they felt very, very left out. And again, in their own words, somebody said the manager had some work experience in the West Bank, so genuinely understood some context and was supportive and checked in. But this is my manager. This is the person I'm talking to every day. In the days following October 7th, a few of my close colleagues expressed sympathy, and my supervisor made it clear that I can take time away from my tasks to deal with it. Again, very understanding. I get you. I understand that this is tough for you. As an individual, as a person, I know you can take some time off. But then we're also hearing the flip side of it. There has been zero support. And keep in mind, I didn't put the zero support in all caps. The individual typing, the respondent typing this in the survey did. There has been zero support for Jews in my organization. It's a very hostile place to work as a Jew. And somebody said, since October 7th, I rarely come into the office. I didn't come into the office for 3 months after October 7th, and no one from management checked in. When I finally came in the office, sometimes people would ask for my opinion about Gaza. So again, here's somebody who doesn't show up for months after October 7th, and nobody bothers to question, are you okay? Is there a reason why you're not coming in? Is there anything that we can do to make it better for you? And again, these are people in their own words, so I'm not making this up, I'm not paraphrasing. This is what somebody had to say. So as we start to look ahead, there is certainly significant consideration for many people in our industry to transition from a secular international development and aid to a different professional field. So that's the third set of bars that you can see, where we have 70% of, again, these are Jewish professionals who are currently working in secular nonprofit organizations. 70% of them say that they would consider transitioning completely out of the industry, out of the human aid and social services field altogether, and go to a different industry. Now we know, as Yael pointed out, we did this right after the USA and the fundings were cut, so we're sure that a lot of this is driven by just funding and lack of opportunities and so forth. And that certainly is evident here. But while these foreign aid cuts are the primary drivers of these willing to transition, 1 in 5 of professionals in our industry who are currently, again, working in secular services, they cite discomfort as a Jewish individual, highlighting the need to address organizational support gaps. So that's a pretty big number. You have 1 in 5 individuals currently working today who are saying, I would consider getting out of this field altogether simply because I feel discomfort as a Jewish individual working in this field. I get there's anti-Israel sentiments, there's anti-Semitic incidents that I'm dealing with. I don't feel supported by the organization I'm working with. And all of that is now filtering to fewer people saying that they want to be in the industry that they are currently in. And these feelings of I'm willing to leave, I'm willing to completely switch into even a non-service field, a non-organizational field, and get into a different industry altogether, those feelings, that level of agreement is higher among those who have told us in the survey, yes, I have experienced anti-Semitism at work, yes, I have experienced anti-Israel experiences at work. So that is clearly a driver, may not be the only driver, but it is clearly a driver of why people are telling us they're going to leave this industry altogether. And then finally, when we think specifically about OLAM, there is really, really, really high levels of interest in joining a community like OLAM. It's underscoring the clear need for spaces offering connection and support for Jewish practitioners in these sectors. And you can see 85% of everybody we spoke to told us, yes, I would be interested in an organization or a group like OLAM coming into my workplace and providing opportunities for me to gather, speak with, and help my organization understand what anti-Semitism really is and the impact that it has on me. Why anti-Israel sentiment, while maybe free speech is acceptable, it can't translate into negative actions to employees of the organization.